Okay. Hi, ma'am. So today we have with us our DORAI Foundation founder herself, Dr. KVG Sumitra Prasad. And this is part of the Health Fest initiative organized and put forward by the DORAI Foundation. And as part of this initiative, we interns at the DORAI Foundation, it is more of an awareness program. And since we have the founder herself right here, I think, ma'am, you'll be able to put forward the enhancement of the initiative.
It's been over 3 years. Very Tarani, for being part of the Health Fest mission. Health Fest is something that we started way back in 2020. And since then, over 70 webinars have been continuously going online and offline. This is to bring about wellness both in the mental health sector and in the physical health sector, looking at different attributes of health. Wellness is a very holistic dimensional. I mean, it has a very multidimensional approach. So we are looking at nutrition, physical fitness, and psychology. This time, however, in the next 16 episodes that we are going to do, Health Fest is trying to primarily focus on the psychological perspective of different conditions that many of us face. So, Tarini, I'm happy that you're taking up the first topic today, and the first webinar goes with Tarini as the hostess of this program. And she has been pursuing her psychology first year in MOP Vaishnav. And it's a great pleasure to have youngsters joining the wellness mission. And DORAI Foundation is happy to have more people and more youngsters join this hand in order to create a wellness bound society and a Swastha India. So go ahead.
Thank you, ma'am. So DORAI Foundation is actually known for its awareness programs and for its various initiatives and a lot of social work. So as part of this initiative, it involves the interns at the DORAI Foundation who have reached out to various individuals with various illnesses and disorders and disabilities. And as part of this initiative this year, we are trying to focus on the psychological effects of having such physical illnesses. And today the topic at hand is ADHD. So I have personally interviewed an individual with ADHD, and in order to understand how living with ADHD is and what kind of techniques and importance is required for a person with ADHD to live successfully, to live a full functioning life, and to also succeed academically and occupationally. And I have picked up one of the rare cases wherein there is an interpersonal relationship between every family member in one particular family. Over here, we are dealing with let's name it X for the promise of confidentiality of the individual. Now, the child with ADHD is of 21 years in age, and she has been adopted into the family. The mother is a single mother and has been divorced 3 times now. She is extremely independent and has raised the adopted child successfully, you can say. So now we will look into the ADHD perspective and then try understanding how the environment of such a family where the mother has been diagnosed with dementia at the age of 60, and a child with a diagnosis of ADHD are trying to live together in a very coexisting manner. So that is the case at hand today. And I hope the discussion I have with Dr. Sumitra Prasad will actually improve the awareness of the viewers. And so, ma'am, when I first, I've asked a lot of questions to this individual, and she's been diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 8.5 years. And when asked for the first signs, she put forward that she was very different from the other child, from the other children of her own age. She was not, people could not control her when she, put forward like a lot of tantrums. She had often this tendency of overthinking. We all humans, as humans, and at this age and generation, we tend to overthink a lot. But how can one understand the difference between a child showing symptoms of ADHD and a normal child without ADHD? Because what are the differential symptoms and behaviors to focus on?
Tarani, overall, the whole ADHD itself defines all the symptomatic features of the condition. It's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So let's break this up in 4 different parts. Attention is trying to focus, being concentrated in one particular given activity at a given space and a given moment. Now, how much of that you can draw yourself into engaging yourself in that particular activity is what attention is all about, where you're there physically, mentally, and you're involved completely as an individual carrying out that particular activity. Now we go to deficit. The next word is deficit is, of course, something that is little, that is thoda kam hai, which is in shortage, which we do not have enough. Now let's put the first and the second word together. So it is attention deficit. Now, what is attention deficit? Which means that all the focus and the energy and the concentration and everything that is required for a person to carry out a particular activity, given activity, in a particular space, in a particular time, when that attention, that span, we call it the attention span, is deficit. You need this much of attention, you need this kind of concentration to carry out a particular activity. And when you do not have that much, it becomes a deficiency, which means that you do not have that kind of focus and direction at this particular moment, in this particular space to do that activity. So ADD itself, attention deficit disorder itself, is a disorder. You know, ADD is different, ADHD is different. There are many people who may not be, I'll go to the second part later, but let me tell you that not all ADDs are ADHDs. Okay, but all ADHDs are ADDs. So this particular person or this particular individual who has, you mentioned the 4 letters, attention deficiency, the person doesn't have that much of attention span that is required for him or her to do a particular activity. Now we go to the third one, hyper. Hyper is something which is excessive, something that is over and above that is required. Everybody needs to be active. For you to carry out something, you have to have the zest and the zeal and the proactiveness and the energy that is required for you to do something. But here, when we're talking about this particular person, the third letter is hyper. The person is hyper. He or she is having all that energy which is heightened, which is more than that what is required. So the activity of the person, the energy level of the person is too much. I mean, the person is physically, there is so much of adrenaline within the individual that there is so much, he is very hyperactive. The activity, the 4th letter, activity, being active, the activeness of a person is when he or she has all that rush to carry out something. Now, unfortunately, the first 2 letters are talking about attention deficiency, which means that There is no scope for the person to try and channelize the last word, hyperactivity, the activeness, the energy, and all the adrenaline rush that the person has doesn't meet with the attention span. It's like having too much of energy, an atomic energy, which needs a capsule, which it needs something to hold it, isn't it? So that is important. But if you do not have that attention span that can anchor this energy, then it becomes difficult. That's when you say that the person doesn't sit in a place, runs around all the time, doesn't carry out any activity. Perhaps there are chances that there is no task completion, and he or she loses interest, and he or she jumps from one activity to another, and there is no way that you can restrain the person in one particular place to do one particular activity in a given span of time. So you'll see children all over the place. There are children who don't sit, and they tend to go around all the time, trying to do everything. And they are and 9 out of 10 children are also people with hyperactivity. When there is so much of all the files and all the RAM is too much. I mean, the capacity is there. There are multi-processors, not just dual processor. There are multi-processors that is functioning there. And therefore, this particular child or this particular individual with attention deficit hyperactivity. Hyperactivity is required at certain times when you have to finish a work. I want to finish this, I want to finish that, I want to finish this. So there is a lot of multitasking that is happening, and which also involves task completion. But with our adults with undiagnosed ADHD, task completion is an issue. So that is where the disorder comes. The disorder comes because you are unable to fulfill that particular task which is given to you, because your focus jumps. It's like a monkey brain that jumps from one to the other, to the other, to the other all the time. So this is what the whole condition is all about. And like I mentioned to you, you will see a child, typically a child with ADHD, all over the place, and there is no filtration of the stimuli that is affecting and affecting the child with ADHD, which means that he will respond to everything that is there. We have a lot of filtration in us, right? Now I'm talking to you. Yes, there's a class running downstairs. The interns, MSW interns are there. I have another program that is at 4 o'clock, and there are things which are all planned. But what is happening at this moment, I have Tarani and the team of psychology interns talking about this particular subject. So my mind will disconnect and cut off all the other stimuli that is coming on to my brain. So there is filtration happening. And this filtration, unfortunately, doesn't happen with the individuals who are untrained, first undiagnosed, and when they are not trained, and when they are not taught, and when they are not conditioned for grooming, nurturing this hyper activity of theirs and this potential of theirs. So you'll find most of these children running all over the place. So these are all the symptomatic features of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Yes, Tarini, you can go to the next.
Thank you very much for explaining it very detailedly, and like very, it was amazing listening to how you could actually break down ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, in such a nice manner. And ma'am, now that we know what are the symptoms of ADHD and how you can observe children with ADHD, how can one person in the environment that is readily available to the child, or like readily right in front of the child, right? How should one person react or respond to the child who's having an episode?
What happens is that when there is a child with the first and foremost thing is for the parents, because they are the primary stakeholders. primary stakeholder, because there is the beneficiary, there is the person the child who has the ADHD. And then the primary circle involves the mother, father, sister, brother, the sibling, and perhaps the grandparents who are also part of the family. Because this is the first circle for anybody, not just children with special needs, but everyone, all so-called children of the mainstream society. So the primary circle, the parents, especially the mother, has to be aware of the fact that the child has a condition. Now, this is called a condition and not a disease, because yes, there are medications that try and regularize and try to inhibit the adrenaline rush, that try to inhibitors, as we call them. So they try to inhibit and try to make sure that these chemicals are all in a very regularized manner. So that is very important. But awareness, understanding that your child has some issue, some problem. And yes, it is a problem. Yes, it is a condition. And don't ever think that it's something that will go away with time. With time, with proper training, with proper conditioning, with proper exposure, with proper nurturing, and with a proper system, support system, the child can better herself or himself with the same condition. We can use it in a very effective manner. I always use the ADHD with atomic energy. Either you can, you make a bomb and destroy the whole world, or you can probably utilize the energy, channelize how much is needed, that can be made, and you can have wonderful, a nuclear plant, which is good for generating electricity for the whole mankind. So it depends on how you are going to tackle this issue. So the parents have to be, the first circle have to be essentially made aware, and then they have to be given the entire exposure of what the condition is all about and what are the triggers that needs to be taken into account, and how is it that the child's hyperactivity can be garnered. You have to garner, you have to make sure that you putting this activity to the best use. So try and get the child into doing a child who's running all over the place would be the best athlete that you can ever see. So get the child, groom the child to become a fantastic sprinter or marathon, long jump, high jump, and all these activities where a lot of physical exercise, where all your energy that needs to be utilized in a very effective and a channelized manner should be done. So the parents are made to get all these areas. How do we bring up this particular child effectively? See, productive engagement program is very, very essential here, Tarani. For parents to not just understand what has to be done with this child, but also to try and take support from professionals who are existing in the society and who cater exclusively to these different conditions the child is born with. I mean, there are children with ADD, there are children who have only attention deficit disorder. They are not running all over the place. But there is a lack of attention span. The child is just sitting chumma, not doing anything, and then not finishing the activity, doesn't seem to be interested in any particular thing or anything at all, and doesn't seem to be having any task completion, and jumps from one task to the other, not because of hyperactivity, but because the person doesn't have enough focus and concentration in one particular activity. But cut to when we talk about hyperactivity, the parents have to try and understand, and this is very visible. It's the most visible condition that you can see. And therefore, when there is an environment that is created, which is conducive, ping pong balls are those ping pong balls, and yo-yo, that is very essential. Because there is a monotony in that activity, and there is so much of hyperactivity. You can see that there is an action. There is no, they are not as lethargic and there's no apathy and lethargy in ADHD. I would love to have, ADHDs with me all the time, because all tasks, the kind of energy that is required for a task to complete, they are always quick and agile all the time. So that agility and that quickness, that proactiveness, and that energy to try and do anything is what needs to be harnessed. And there has to be a lot of physical activities that has to be put in sequence for these children with ADHD. And once the parent tries to seek more knowledge, more information from experienced professionals to help the child, the professional and the parents together, hand in glove, try and nurture this child's potential and help the child to evolve better. So these are the things that needs to be taken into account once you identify a child with ADHD. Yes, Tarini.
Ma'am, my next question is about the psychological effects a child would have to go through while having or living with ADHD. So, in the case of X, and in the case of many other such children who are diagnosed with ADHD, most often in an educational setting, talking about their academics and while going to school, having difficulty, like you mentioned, having difficulty to complete a task, having difficulty in paying attention to anything that needs completion affects them a lot. So starting from their routine, they may not have a fixed routine because of their hyperactivity, because of their spontaneity, because of this they require an outlet for their adrenaline rush and such things. Brushing the teeth, uh, bathing, such things that are like similar activities for other people is very hard for them. But when you see it academically, academics in a whole requires the completion of assignments, the completion of different kinds of curriculum, syllabus, and all of that. In the case of X, and like I said, or like a lot many other ADHD children with like individuals with ADHD, they find it very difficult to cope with the syllabus and they fall behind, right? So they often have this frustration that arises in them because it does not stem from the fact that they do not want to do it. They want to do it, right? They want to study well, they want to score well, just like how their peer group is able to do it. That frustration, that amount of frustration that stems, and the inability to actually turn things around and do something, because of course hyperactivity is not making things simpler, right? How at what point can these such people actually be able to how can such people be able to channelize themselves in order to, like you said, you can also channelize your hyperactivity in such a way that you can do and complete things, tasks are in a in a very beautiful manner, right? So what is your suggestion or the kind of techniques you would suggest that a child can actually do in order to complete such tasks, the channelizing of their hyperactivity?
Fine. So that okay. So we go with the question. The question has run from one area to the other. There are 3-4 different aspects that has been covered in this question. So I will sum up the whole thing in the next 5 minutes, hopefully. So we are talking about. We started off with the question that Tarini asked about the psychological effect of a child or an individual with ADHD. Now, if the child has been diagnosed, then there is no major issue. Of course, the condition itself is very trying and tiring. Both this will sit back and you don't have a laid back attitude, most of the individuals with ADHD. And I come from my personal experience of having been an undiagnosed ADHD person to finally coming to a situation where professionally I got in touch and I academically tried to learn and understand myself better. And then go through all those diagnoses that had to be done to make sure that what I went through as a child, undiagnosed ADHD, is what has caused all these areas of turmoil and difficulties during childhood. So there is a psychological effect of undiagnosed as well as diagnosed, because yes, you're diagnosed, but how far is your entire nurturing pattern very conducive is a really question to be taken into account. So most of these individuals do not have, they have a lot of friends, but sometimes you jump from one clique to the another. So there is sense of belonging becomes a real big issue for most of the individuals and children with ADHD. Then the question was on academics. Yes, it becomes difficult. Like I mentioned earlier, the streams, you lose interest, you lose focus. So it is very difficult for you to stay connected and follow one particular pattern of stream of academics. And sitting, and everything is rote learning. So sitting down and writing and getting things done, writing notes, taking down notes is something, it's a very, very stressful time for any ADHD, because you need to go out and you can hear. So most of the ADHD, I mean, almost all ADHDs will find it very easy to try and learn. They are all auditory learners. So rote learning takes place, auditory learning takes place most of the time. It's not sitting, writing down and practice padna solra. This doesn't work out with our ADHD. So that is important. Then you shifted your question to what happens when the activities of daily living is to be taken into account, because it's too much, because you need to finish up. Actually, the activities of daily living is taken care of, but it is not as complacent and as aram say time taking. Kulikiradallam fast, brush allam kuda fast panniduva. Unlike your question where they don't, they do, provided there is a proper system which is already made in place. So the regimental, there has to be a structured, organized pattern of everyday living at home, in school, and when they come back, there is a play group, there is an area of work. The entire day schedule has to be planned in a very effective manner. So that is required. Then you mentioned about what has to be done with regard to trying to channelize this. Like I mentioned earlier, that yes, it is important to channelize their energy with physical activities and involving in physical, it could be sports, and sports not it cannot be chess or even carom for that matter. Okay, because அடிச்சுடுவா அது உட்கார்ந்து focus பண்ணது ரொம்ப கஷ்டமா இருக்கு. It is a difficult task, because again you're trying to make the person, unless you utilize that energy, it becomes difficult. So once all that activity, all that running around happens, even in school, we always take a child when we are including, when we are going to inclusive schools, we try and have this child with special needs into the mainstream school. We go and orient the school authorities, the management, the teachers, and there is a peer group orientation program that is done, where we tell the teacher that this child is not going to sit through in the class. Please make it flexible so that the child goes for a round and comes back and then sits and does this, because it is very difficult for the child to sit through. That's very essential. So whether it is academics or at home, the activities have to plan with keeping the attention span of the child, the activity and the energy level of the child. It has to be, I mean, any program that we make, everything has to be taken into account with regard to the child's energy level, the utilization of the energy. This way, life becomes really very sorted. And I come from that plane, having ADHD today. There is a lot of multitasking, and what an ADHD can achieve, I don't think so any so-called normal, highly competent intellectual can also achieve, because there is so much that can be done with this abundance of energy and abundance of hyperactivity. So I think we sum up saying that ADHD is definitely, it's like an atomic power that you have. You can definitely turn out to become a superhuman being, provided you channelize that energy and bring about that super energy of yours into a systematic pattern of life and living. Thank you very much, Tarini, for having me today and being part of the Health Fest. And this is really wonderful that we are taking up all these subjects and all these topics. And I wish the whole team the very best in the future webinars with different resource persons. And I hope it gives you the proper insight that is required to try and harness whatever that you have. It could be any condition, any level, any gravity. As long as we harness it, and as long as we channelize it, I think we are in a safe place. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Shreya, for creating the link. And thank you, Aparna. And God bless you all.